Good morning. Chinese electric vehicles are taking over global markets anywhere they're allowed to be sold. And how that is happening is very unlike the 1970s and 1980s when Japanese brands came out of nowhere and killed Detroit. Japan focused on building smaller cars that cost less. Japanese car makers figured, correctly, that there was a huge consumer market that was underserved by GM and Ford and Chrysler and the German and Italian car companies. But today, Chinese brands are going after the same markets that made Toyota and Nissan rich and are building cars that cost less but are superior in quality besides. Chinese car companies offer far more models to choose from, and they can be built faster and more affordably. There are two major problems for Western car makers that are probably fatal to them. Chinese electric vehicles are breaking through to buyers of traditional gas-burning cars because of cost and now because of convenience. That's problem one. The second is that the tariffs and import bans are falling apart because Chinese car companies are setting up manufacturing plants across the world and thereby get around the tariffs entirely. We're looking today at BYD, who is gobbling up market share in Europe. The legacy car makers like VW, BMW, and Mercedes are trying to catch up to China in EVs instead of the other way around, and BYD is way ahead. And the company's plan is to have all their European sales served by its new facilities in Hungary. The strategy of using steep levies to deny Chinese car makers access to the European market had a couple of problems anyway. First is that the factories that turn out Chinese models are just more productive and efficient, and brands from Europe or the United States don't have models that can compete with China on price, even after the tariffs go on. And then there's this, which is that BYD and others will just open plants in Europe and make the tariffs irrelevant anyhow. Next, we have the problem that BYD and the other Chinese brands pose to buyers of traditional fuel-burning cars. This is from Inside EVs, and they came over to see what BYD is doing in fast charging and conclude that it has changed everything. The number one complaint from buyers who are deciding between gas-powered vehicles and electric cars is the charging problem. It just takes too long. So the engineers at BYD got busy on how to make the battery charging process take just 5 minutes, the same as what it takes to fill up a car with gas. Megawatt Charging is what BYD came up with, and it delivers 1,000 kilowatts of power at 1,000 volts, which is twice as powerful as those on offer in the US market. The newest BYD models gain 250 miles or 400 kilometers of range in 5 minutes. They go deeply into how it all works, and what BYD learned early on is that they had to build an entirely new architecture for the cars. The whole system needed to be built from scratch. Multi-physics challenges existed in electrical, magnetic, mechanical, thermal systems. BYD, though, is probably the most vertically integrated major company in the world today. Everything they do is in-house, and so this entire system is proprietary to BYD and only to BYD. And they held the costs down. The price ranges from $29,000 to $40,000, and those are still far below the average cost of new cars from anywhere else. China has functional monopolies on the supply chains and the manufacturing of batteries already, and those now extend to the charging piles for the EV systems. Those had to be reinvented too, and BYD made the charging guns themselves far easier to handle besides. For the demonstration, they began with a BYD Han L sedan with a battery at 13%. After 90 seconds, it was at 30%, and after 150 seconds, it was at 40%. At the 5-minute mark, it was over 60%. So in those 5 minutes, the car gained 262 miles, 421 km of driving range. BYD's sales in Europe have tripled year over year to over 9,000 cars sold and over 11,000 new cars sold if we add in the other countries here. Tesla is moving just as fast in the other direction, dropping over a third year over year, and now they're behind BYD. So Tesla is already in big trouble in Europe. And now that Chinese engineers have broken the fast charging problem and setting up factories to get past the tariffs and the import bans, the other European car makers should be worried too. This is Yueyang Tower in Hunan. Be good.
Love your neighbor as yourself. Pray for those who hurt you. Love your enemies. Do unto others as you want others to do for you. Store up for yourself treasure in heaven. For where your treasure is, there will your heart be also.